Hi, this is Gordon of October Library here with appreciation video today. 2 days ago was Philip K. Dick's 92nd birthday. I posted a tribute to him on the Facebook group October Library and got a lot of well-received likes from it, and 2 new members have joined the group, and now I'm close to 40 members, which is really exciting. And while I was reading over the comments on people's favorite Philip K. Dick novels and heartwarming comments, I realized I should have done a tribute video to the author, as I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick. So I decided to do a video on all the Philip K. Dick books I have at the moment. There are still a few others I have to add to the collection. But I thought it'd be nice to do a nice tribute video to one of the great science fiction writers, in my opinion, who doesn't get talked a lot. And a lot of times I find when people do know about Philip K. Dick, sometimes people do know his work, and other times it's just the films. And there's a particular film that a lot of people always go on and on about, which really irritates me. So I'm going to share with you my collection of Philip K. Dick books so you get to know this man, and I recommend you do read these novels, as he's a great, fantastic writer and has a lot of stuff he wrote really ahead of his time. Really, I feel that Phil was just ahead of a lot of other science fiction writers like Robert Heinlein and a whole bunch of others. He was just really ahead of his time, and he dealt with like more darker subject matter than most science fiction writers would go to at the time. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. The first book published by Philip K. Dick, The Solar Lottery. This was first published in 1955. I was very lucky enough to get the very first book by Phil. However, it's not in the really best of shape. I had to glue the cover back to the book, and it's not, kind of didn't align it properly. Still readable, but I'd like to one day find a copy of this in better shape, though. But that's his first book. The next book I got here by Phil, one of his earlier ones, is Eye in the Sky. Just got some really nice 50s artwork on it, and this was first published 1957. I got this edition, and then I have another one, a later published edition of the same book, which has a really nice cover on it. I kind of like this cover more than the other one. Yeah, this edition here was published. This is 57, but I have a feeling this is reprinted in the 70s, but it just says the day when this book was published, so I'm not sure what year that edition was published. And then these are some like newer editions I have here of his older works. This is first one here, Vulcan's Hammer, and it's got you can tell it's a really newer edition, and where they title it as PKD on all the books, probably like a series, a reprint of his books. Some of the covers I like, some I don't like, but I would really like to own the original editions of these books, because some of the covers for some of these like other books that this publisher reprinted, I'd just like to have like, the originals and stuff. But anyway, Vulcan's Hammer was published in 1960. Yeah, this is by Meritor Books, and this edition was published 2012. I'd like to own the original edition of this. The Solar Lottery I read years ago it was interesting. This one was all right as well. His later books I find do get a lot better, but his early stuff is still enjoyable. Okay, next book is The Pentiment Truth, and this was originally published in 1964, and this one was published in 2011. This was a really interesting story. There we go. The Penultimate Truth. It's basically about a bunch of people living underground, and basically they're told that the world above them is like a toxic wasteland, and one guy is able to get to the surface and find out it's a lie and tries to tell the people what's really going on. Really good book. Really good book. Next book, Clans of Alpha Moon, and it was first published in 1964. This edition was published 2013. Yeah, I'm really not a fan of this cover. I'd rather like to own like an original edition of Clans of Alpha Moon. Anyway. Okay, next is Dr. Blood Money. And this cover I don't mind, but I would like to own the original one, though. And this was first published in 1965. This edition was published 2012. This has got a theme that Phil would later do in another book of his, which I don't own yet, Dea Saran. And both in that book and this one, Dr. Blood Money, it has a character with no arms and basically has to move around like on a kind of like a wheelchair of some sorts. But this is a post-politic novel. I read this. It was very, very different, but it's still good. I have to reread it again. Okay, next I got a reprint, but a different publisher this time. The Kraken Space. You can see it better like that. And Kraken Space was originally published in 1966. This is First Vintage Books edition, published 2005. I have yet to read this, but I heard it's like an alternate history story, and a lot of people have been comparing it with today's world, or so if I remember when people were posting this book. But I look forward to reading this. And okay, next book by the other publisher, Our Friends from Phonics 8. This is kind of a cool cover. This edition, was originally published. Come on. Here we go. Was first published 1970. This edition was published 2013. I really don't know much about this one, but I heard it's interesting, so I'll check it out. Now, a book that I have read was actually my first Phil K. Dick novel I read that got me into science fiction, and this is a fantastic book. I got this as a Christmas gift from my father. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This was first published in 1968, and this is a very important book for me as a science fiction fan and writer, as this book really got me into science fiction and made me interested with Phil K. Dick himself. Sadly, this great book has yet to be made into a proper adaptation of a film, and if you're already thinking of the other film directed by Ridley Scott, don't, because it is nowhere near as good as this masterpiece right here. I will be discussing about that film in a later top list video on top, like, just adaptations that were just terrible, just like the worst adaptations ever. And anyway, back to this book. This is basically takes place in the year 2021, where basically the world is like just kind of a mess to live in after World War III has killed off a lot of people and animals, and so most animals are like extinct. However, if you find one animal, like an actual one, it can go for a lot of money, even bugs too. So a lot of people want to own animals, but a lot of them don't exist anymore. So people buy like androids, like basically robotic versions of the animals, which are sold like cheaply and stuff. And this has the character Richard Decker, who is basically assigned to go after androids who are after their master and stuff. It's been a long time since I read this book, but I would love to reread this again. This is an excellent book, one of my favorites by Phil, and I recommend you check this book out. Do not watch the Ridley Scott film, because it does not come anywhere as good as this masterpiece here. Okay. Another book I read, and one of my other favorites, by Phil Ullrich, which is Latin for everything, and this was published in 1969. This is an excellent Phil K. Dick novel. It's basically set in the future. Basically, this guy goes to some like business meeting that takes place on the moon, and what's his name? Chip? Yeah, Chip. Chip goes to this executive meeting that takes place on the moon, and the whole thing turns out to be a trap, and a bomb goes off, and he's put in like a half-life stasis where the person responsible is like monitoring him and those who survived. Chip is like in this alternate reality where time seems to be going backwards, and they're trying to figure out how to get back. And this has a great twist at the ending, which I thought was really clever of Phil to do. And this is another really good book I recommend you check out for sure. Okay, I need a drink here. Okay, back to the books. Next is another book I read of Phil, Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. And this is a very shitty edition, as I do not like this cover. I would like to replace it with the original. And this was first published in here it is. Flow My Tears, the Policeman was first published in 1974. This is from First Vintage Books, and this was 1993. Really good story. It's about a musician who takes a drug, and it causes his whole world to change, where people don't remember him, don't recognize him, yet when he goes up to people he knows, they act like they never met him before, and a whole bunch of other stuff happens. It's a really good book. Another really good one to check out, too. The next book by Phil is A Scanner Darkly. And this was first published 1977. This edition is a reprint from 2011. Again, I don't like the cover, but besides the shitty cover, the story is what matters the most, and this is another good book by Phil. This basically takes place in a kind of dystopian future of California, where basically an undercover cop goes undercover to try and bust a drug dealer who's selling this new drug, which is called Substance D, which stands for death, and you take this stuff too many times, and it really begins to basically mess with your mind, where you begin to hallucinate and see things that aren't really there and stuff. And the main character becomes like just basically a kind of a mess in the book, going between his life as a cop and then as a drug addict. Really good book. I have the film that was the adaptation of this of Scanner Darkly with Keanu Reeves. I have yet to watch it yet, but I do plan on watching it, and I heard a lot of good things about it, and so I'll check the film out and reread this book too. All right, and the last novel I have of Phil is Lies Corporation, and this was basically a book that was published after his death in '82, and let's see. I am not sure if this book was published first or after his death, so I'm not going to say any years, but this was a 2011 edition by that publisher that did the PKD thing. I've heard mixed things about this. Some people like it, some don't, but when I go to read it, I'll see what I think of it. Okay. Next, I have a collection of short stories by Phil, as he wrote a lot of them, and a lot of them became very well-known films like Total Recall, which is the original Total Recall film is the best with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Don't bother with the shitty remake, because it doesn't come anywhere good as that film. But anyway, on to the collections I have of Phil. First collection I got of Phil right here from Kruger Press is a series they did. Paycheck and Other Classic Stories by Phil. I saw the shitty adaptation of Paycheck with Ben Affleck. It was just not a really goofy movie. Let's see. This is first printing 1990. And let's see. Let's see the story. Some of the stories he's got here. Where's Paycheck? Oh, there it is. I don't recognize some of the other stories here. I have yet to read this collection of short stories. I read some of the other ones. Definitely plan on rereading those again, including this one. All right, the next one. Second Valerie, and other classic stories. This has the story which became Screamers, a really good 90s sci-fi horror film with Peter Weller, a really good movie. Based on the story, Second Valerie. And let's see, this edition was published 2000. This edition was published 2002. I believe this was published in like 88 or 87. I'm not sure. This has other short stories in the short stories in this collection are The Golden Man, again another shitty film with Nicolas Cage, which was not good. Story was really good though. And Second Valerie, really good collection. And then the next one, We Can Remember It for U-Haul Resale and Other Classic Stories. This has the story which became the basis for the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, directed by Paul Verhoeven. Total Recall, an excellent film. I seen some comments recently. People thought it was just like a B action movie, just over the top. But in all honesty, it's one of the better adaptations of the story. It's not as violent as the original story is, but the film sticks to the whole theme of the never-ending question: is it real? Is it a dream? And I love how Paul Verhoeven plays with the audience as they're watching this, while adding his nice, rich touch of satire of corporations and stuff. It's an excellent movie, and it just got a 4K release, which I do plan on getting because it was an excellent movie. The stories in this one are, let's see, never resale. Imposter. That was I remember that story. That was a really interesting story. Trying to remember, there was another story I read in one of these anthologies, and it had a really, it was really good. I can't remember it sadly, but I just remember it involves like a cuckoo clock, and oh well, I'll just have to find it when I read these again. And the other collections I got, this is one I found at Value Village, and I didn't know about this edition. The Progressing Machine, I hope I pronounced that right, and it's just got this really cool cover of a machine and a wolf coming out of it. And this was first published, by Ace Books, 1969. And let's see. Contents in this are the Progressing Machine War Game, Upon Dull Earth, Rogue, R-O-O-G, War Veteran, Top Standby Job, Beyond Lies, the WUB. Oh, it's also got We Can't Remember It for Your Whole Resale. I didn't know that was in here. Captive Market, If There Were No Bentley Camel, Retreat Syndrome, The Crawlers, Oh, to Be a Bloodle, What the Dead Men Say, Pay for the Printer. Looking forward to reading this. Oh, I should have glued the novel. Oh well. Next book is Valves, and this was a book that Phil wrote in '81. Was getting back into science fiction. He kind of took a a break from it during the late 70s and early 80s, and he was coming back with it, but unfortunately he died in 82 before he could really get back into it. This was a interesting story. It's kind of a blend between science fiction and things that happened to Phil in his pasts. It's still an interesting story. Yeah, I like to find a better edition that doesn't have half the cover like chewed off. Yep, this was from Bayman Spector Books and was first published in 1981. I'll have to read this again. It's part of a series, but I only read the first book, so I don't know what the other series is like. And then the last collection I have, which I found at a dollar store, and Minority Report, and this was made to the really just terrible movie with Tom Cruise. I remember I used to like that film until I read someone's review, and they just pointed out so many plot holes what the film had, and I looked back at it and realized that the film shouldn't work because of the plot holes. Like, for example, the big one was, if these precogs can see murder, but they're only stationed in Washington, D.C., then how did they stop the other murders from the other states? It never explains that. And a whole bunch of other plot holes, and I realized it's not the best adaptation to Phil K. Dick story. And I'm kind of not a fan of this cover. I'd like to get the critical press edition. They got a much better one. This is from... This is published from... this is from a UK release. Orion Paperback. And this was first published in 2002. And this one's got a lot of one of his popular short stories, as well as a bunch of other ones I saw in the other collection, and the other ones I showed. Okay. All right, that is it for the Phil K. Dick collection video. Like I said, there are a bunch of other books that I would love to add to my collection, and I got a couple others I plan on getting once I have the room for them. That's it for the video today. I hope you all enjoy, and don't forget to check out Phil K. Dick, excellent science fiction writer, and do not forget to check out my Facebook group, October Library, a group where you can post, share, and review fiction. Until then, I'll see you later.